Hello student. So, we are on module 14 finance and PPP in solid waste management projects. So, in the previous lecture I talked about financing and also gave the importance for the PPP projects under solid waste management system public private partnership. So, today I thought before giving some examples like some success story or failures stories about PPP projects in India in solid waste management system, I thought first let you people know about the PPP first, what exactly meaning and what are the different ways the collaboration or participation between public means local body and the one private company. So, when you say PPP is normally is a arrangement between the government or government owned entity in one side and other side is a private sector and that is for the provision of public assets or related services for public benefit and through the investment being made by the on both way from the local body or as in private body and specific for the specific time period. Okay. And what are the risks normally or most important pillars we can say based on that this collaboration or participation between the local body and private company is based on the risk transfer, value for money, output specifications and promise of better project structures in design and also the efficiency. These are the basic pillars when you talk about the PPP projects. So, it is not only for the solid waste management also, but for any infrastructure project where this collaboration between local body and private company. So, these will be the most important parameters and this was I think is a old news, but there is a attention now for collaboration between the local body and private company or PPP projects. So, when you say some the history about PPP projects in India and especially for the solid waste management, mid 1990 like large scale project in the metro city like Chennai, Delhi were not able to execute MSWM project properly due to inappropriate value chain and less scope of private participation. So, that was found in the mid 1990 and late 1990 was thought about this rule also came MSW rule 2000 and had been I think in this rule actually the specially mention about processing and treatment of solid waste and proper disposal like sanitary landfill. So, because of that it was thought about there will be there should be a participation by the private company for proper infrastructure and proper processing and treatment facilities in the metro cities especially. And late 2000 this private company they started the participation and mostly for the collection transportation and earlier actually that was a local contractor used to be there for the collection segregation or for transportation and but still very few implemented under the PPP mode. Now, why PPP actually first need to be understand like for economic growth and development we need a lot of investment, that is the important one and government could not provide the enough fund for development or do not and lot of infrastructures required especially for the developing countries like India. And it was thought about that private sector has a lot of capital for investment, and not only the investment, but also with the they will have the proper lot of benefits will come up from them, like the developing infrastructure for developing. The government needs to work out a system where private players can come in towards creation of public infrastructure, which are traditionally provided by the government. So, and also if suppose the local body will install one composting plants or one recycling plant, is very difficult to run or operation by the local authority, and even the efficiencies also from private companies was far better. That is why it was thought about to have collaboration between local authority with the private companies. So, there are various services which could not sufficiently managed by the government agency, because there are a lot of weaknesses, institutional weaknesses. But I think these are the services are is very important for the citizens, and the private sector has expertise, management capacity, capabilities, institutional strength to manage the various services and also the utilities efficiently. That was the one very important factor, and if a framework is developed wherever private players can come in, it will result a good management of service, better service. And also it was finalized that a lot of advantages from the private company after the collaboration. If you see some facts here, like India now normally spending 6% of its GDP for the infrastructure, and China is 20%. Okay. But currently we are seeing that lot of infrastructures are coming, and also India is looking for 15 to 20% investment in the infrastructure of their particular GDP. So, this was one line I found in the budget speech, that was in the one of the finance minister. The importance of infrastructure for rapid economics development cannot be overstated. So, this was one of the important line, you can see that, and also was thought about to have lot of infrastructure in the country. So, if you see the general features of PPP, like what the public sector will do and what private sector will do. So, here I wrote 5 points, like public sector transferred and assets to the private sector entity, usually for the term on the arrangement. So, whatever the arrangement has been come up, they will just transfer the assets. Now, the task by the private sectors will build the facility, will provide the services in the defined period, and these private sector entity agrees to transfer the assets back to the public sector at some points. So, that was the general features of PPP projects. So, again I am explaining that private sector will transfer the assets to the private authority. Now, private authority will start the services for the particular time period, and once that time period will over, these all assets will be transferred to the local authority. So, if you see the benefits of PPP model, so is the benefit for the citizen, benefits for the government, and benefits for the private partner. See, if you do not know the proper benefits for all the stakeholders, is very difficult to accept such kind of idea. So, if you see the just for citizens first, I think it was very good for them, for the citizens, because easy access to the services, single window, and all 24/7 collections, flexibility is not only for solid waste management only, but all kind, I think all kind of PPP projects, like government also the better liquidity, minimizing the finance budget from the government, implementation, efficiency of management, that was lot of benefits for the government. Now, I think is good for the citizens, good for the government, but also it should be benefit for the private company, then only private sector will come to the will collaborate to the government body. Like they found that creation of employment, low risk, and lot of revenues used to be get it in the projects. Like revenue means, I think you know, in the solid waste management, the revenue in the form of energy production, revenue in the form of collection, revenue in the form of production of compost, biogas, energy. I think that is why the lot of revenues was there. Fund that kind of benefits was for the private sector. Now, when you talk about the PPP models, so there are number of models available. So, here I made it like private sector involvement based on that, where the low involvement, low participation to the high participation. So, it started with the simple DBO model, they design, build, operate, then followed by it started with BOT and DBFO, design, build, finance, operate. So, likewise, because there lot of involvement of the private sector, but in India the major was one was accepted like design, build, finance and operate. So, most of the PPP projects was under DBFO model, and also the BOT means build, own, operate and transfer. So, this was another model was been used for India or Indian cities. So, I will just explain one by one what exactly this model. So, like first is the take the BOT model, like build, operate and transfer. So, it is a very simple and very conventional PPP model, where this private partner is responsible for build. First I think for build, before building you will be required design. So, design, build, operate for particular contract period, and after that you transport to the local body. That was the model was BOT. Then came the build, own and operate. So, in this case the design and build was from the private sector, and also operate, and this operate for the entire period. So, there is no transfer to the local body, and also this particular infrastructure will owned by the private sector. But in earlier that build, operate, transfer, the BOT model, the owner was the local authority. Now, this came that build, own, operate and transfer. So, this is the same was in the BOT, but only the O has been added, that is for own. So, here the private sector will design, build and also will be the owner of that particular infrastructure, and as an owner this will operate for the contractor particular contracting period for maybe 15 years, 20 years, and it will transfer to the local body. Now, this build, operate, lease and transfer. So, in this approach the government gives a concession to a private entity to build a facility, own the facility, lease the facility for to the public sector, and then end of the lease period transfer ownership of the facility to the government. And this another one, the rehabilitate, operate and transfer ROT. Under this approach, the governments or local body allow private promoters to rehabilitate and operate a facility during the concession period, and after the concession period will over, the project is transferred back to the government or the local body. And this is the important one, the design, build, finance, operate and transfer, DBFOT. So, is most common form of PPP used where the private sector operator design, build, finance also, own and construct the facilities and operate it commercially for the concession period, after which the facility is transferred to the local authority. So, in this case legal ownership of the assets vests with the public sector, the concession period ends. So, this another one like design, build, finance and operate. So, in this model the private party assumes that entire responsibility of design, construction, finance, operate for the period of concession. So, there is no transfer in this case. So, means I think that facility will get over after that. So, this could be good for the sanitary landfill. So, is a design period is 20 years. So, that facility won't required after that. So, now there are two kind of management project under the any kind of model, like first is the management contract and other is the service contract. So, in the management contract is the arrangement to bring private partnership in managing a portion or whole part of the public infrastructure. And in the this is for entire management or in the participation in the management for the entire project or portion of the project. So, in this case the private entity has to design, deliver, operation, control and procurement of equipment, and has to look into labor management, public sector retain the ownership and commercial risk. And in service sector this approach is less focused than the management contract. In this approach the private promoter performs a particular operation or management function for a fee over a specific period of time. So, in the solid waste management projects, many projects under the management contracts and many projects under the service contracts also. Now, the processes in PPP projects. So, there are 4 phases like identification, full feasibility, procurement and operation. These are the 4 major phases under the PPP projects. So, we can see the one by one. The first is the identification. So, in the identification take place or phase 1 take place before entry to the PPP development pipeline. Its purpose to identify and test the project so that the quality of the PPP pipeline is increased. And at the completion of this phase, the sponsoring agency will have identify a project that is suitable for further development as PPP. And also the strategic planning to identify and prioritize the infrastructure service need, and the project pre-feasibility analysis is required is there in the phase 1, PPO suitability check and even the radiance check, internal clearance should take place within the sponsoring agency. Now, next is the full feasibility. So, planning and preparation of PPP projects management. So, carrying out a detailed feasibility study including PPP due diligence of the projects, is including the financial viability indicator model, value for money indicator tool, and deciding on the best suited procuring method for the projects. So, the first draft of the key project document will be created. And now, procurement. So, important activity that should be carried out to prepare for procurement are described, and here expression of interest or UA process are described, and also the qualifying process covering the request for qualification and shortlisting, final draft of key binding documents are discussed. So, and now last is the operation. So, in the phase 4 being the project is reached technical closure with the signing of concession agreement. Life of PPP during phase 1 involves the implementation, operation, performance monitoring. These are the two major the points, and once the contract is signed, the sponsors goes from the preparing the PPP to management, its implementation and ongoing operation. So, the responsibility of phase 4 will typically be a contract management team within the sponsor. Now, if you see the institutional framework, so there are two important bodies where set up a deal with PPP in India. So, the first is the Public Private Partnership Appraisal Committee and Empowered Committee, and other is the PPP cell. So, if you talk about the Public Private Partnership Appraisal Committee, was set up in January 2006 under the chairman of Secretary, Department of Economic Affairs. This is specially for the JNREM program. So, member of committee consist of Planning Commission, Department of Legal Affairs and Administrative Department, and is a empowered committee, like it consists of Secretary of the Economic Affairs, Planning Commission, and it is provision to provide viability gap funding up to rupees 200 crores in audit by providing clarification related to the eligibility of the project, and the empowered institutions, it has a authorities to sanction viability gap funding of rupees 100 crores for each project. Now, next is the PPP cell. So, PPP cell it is set up in the Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance. It deals with the matters and proposal related to clearance of same PPP AC and looks into a examine and approval related to PPP projects costing between rupees 200 crores to 250 crores. Okay. So, now financing scheme. So, various schemes have been started to providing financing to PPP projects, like first is the viability funding scheme or viability gap funding is a incentive scheme in which certain percentage of total capital cost is paid by the government to make the project economically viable. Now, next is the Indian Infrastructure Finance Company, provides the long term finance to the viable infrastructure project in broad sector of transportation, energy, water, sanitation, communication, social and commercial infrastructure. And the India Infrastructure Project Development Fund provide financial support for quality project development activity. The sponsoring authority will thus be able to source funding to cover a portion of PPP transaction cost, thereby reducing the impact of cost related to procurement on their budget. Now, PPP in different states of India, like many states in India already have PPP framework and they have PPP infrastructure policies. They establish PPP cell with institutional framework like PPP apex authorities. Now, currently the 19 states in India have been shown as having PPP system in place. So, you can check this source like www.pppinindia.com. So, even the what are the projects are running, our projects has been ran already or finished under the PPP program, you can see in this website. And Government of India avail technical assistance from ADB, Asian Development Bank, for assisting 12 states for setting up a PPP framework during 2009 to 2016. Many states have now taken up the projects on PPP mode. PPP in India, like realizing the huge potential offered by PPP, the government of India have taken up PPP on a big scale, and PPP policy was drawn up and PPP policy guidelines were drawn up in 2005, and PPP viability gap funding guidelines was also drawn up and notified in January 2006, and dedicated like website like PPP in India was developed for dissemination of information on PPP and knowledge sharing, and various PPP document like model RFP, model concession agreement were drawn up and are in place. Technical was that Asian Development Bank. Now there are lot of infrastructure projects are running under the PPP model. Even the new academic institutes also have been are running in India under the PPP mode. So there are number of success stories under the PPP projects. There are some failure studies also are there. I think it is very difficult to get such kind of data, but for this course I had come up with few success and failure under these PPP projects. So that we will see in the next class. Yeah, thank you.